Here we go. And our recording is in progress. So I wanted to think today a bit about Labor Day and what Labor Day means as COVID continues. But as usual, we want to start with the gospel and see where that takes us. So Jesus, in our gospel story, is on his way, or is out in Tyre, which is on the sea coast, on the coast of the Mediterranean. Jesus is on vacation. And we've noticed this last while how often in the Gospel of Mark, Jesus is on vacation. Now, Jesus is always running away. Oh, there's work to do. Oh, I'm going to run away here. And oh, there's a bunch of crowd. I'm going to run that direction. He's not very good at it, admittedly, but he keeps trying. There's something to be said for at least he keeps trying. So he's running away to Tyre, right, which should be like, probably a 2 or 3 day walk out to Tyre from his normal home, maybe longer than that. He should, but apparently it's not far enough. Because even though he's trying to keep himself to himself, some woman who's not even Jewish, right? She's not a foreigner. Well, I mean, she's a foreigner to him, but he's in her town. So he's the foreigner. And she knows about him and she wants help. So I was reading this story, and it's interesting how every time you read these stories, there's something new if you're paying attention. This time I noticed that what the woman's daughter has is an unclean spirit, right? The word is akatharton. Means not, and katharton is the word that is the root of our word cathartic, right? So it's an uncatharted spirit, I suppose, which means that it's not an evil spirit. Now, maybe for Mark, these two words, evil spirit and unclean spirit, are the same basic idea, but Mark's very particular about unclean. He's got a thing about unclean. And so it's worth, I think, just taking a pause and going, so it's not an evil spirit, because see, uncleanness in Jesus' Jewish world is for the most part a temporary phenomenon. Right? You are unclean because something happened to you or you did something, but basically you're just unclean for like 24 hours and then it goes away naturally, right? Or you go and have a bath and you're no longer unclean. Or sometimes if you're really unclean, it takes 7 days, right? But it's not a question of, remaining that way for the rest of your life. It's just a temporary thing that really doesn't disrupt your life. It's not a moral thing. It's not, well, you did something bad. Like, so touching a corpse makes you unclean, which means that if you have someone in your family who dies and you help prepare the body, you become ritually unclean. That's not a bad thing. It just is. Right? So this spirit is unclean, which means that the spirit's problem is fixable. Things that are unclean can become clean. And in the Gospel of Mark especially, Jesus has a very backwards way of thinking about unclean. And normally, right, unclean is unclean, right? So if you're walking down the road, going somewhere, and there's a puddle, a dirty puddle in your way, one of the transitions between childhood and adulthood is that you walk around the puddle because you want to. Not because your parents make you, right? Sophie, what do you do? Do you go around the puddle or do you still really want to go through it? Yeah, okay, right. And as you get old, you don't even want to anymore. It's terrible, right? Hang on to that feeling. But the idea is you're clean, puddle dirty. I go through the puddle, I get dirty. Very simple. Right? Same thing works in ritual purity, right? I'm clean, that thing over there is dirty. If I touch it, I become unclean. Jesus has a backwards approach to uncleanness. Jesus regularly reaches out and touches unclean people to make them clean, right? Jesus thinks that what's communicable is cleanliness. You can touch unclean things and it doesn't work with puddles. Right? So don't go try this at home, right? I've never seen anyone successfully enter a mud puddle and make it clean, right? But Jesus thinks that at least about people, potentially also about spirits. We know that Jesus healed this girl by what? Well, we don't know exactly what he did. We know that the spirit left the girl, but maybe, just totally speculation here, maybe Jesus cleansed the spirit and the spirit went, well, I don't need to hang out here anymore. I'm fine, and went home, wherever home was. Right? All we know is that the spirit left the girl. Right? Maybe because that was the way Jesus thought about unclean things. I'm just going to clean this thing, and we don't have a problem anymore. So why does this matter? Well, maybe it matters when we confront the various systems in our world. Right? There's a sense, right? There's an argument to be made that the spirit of our culture is significantly unclean. But what if we thought of it as unclean rather than evil? It's not an evil culture, it's an unclean culture. Yes, it's often very divisive. Yes, it's militaristic. Yes, it's covetous. Right? And if we think of it as evil, there's no hope for it. Nothing we can do about evil. Evil is just evil. Right? And so the best thing we can do with the evil in our culture is just avoid it. Just don't touch it. Just stay away from it. Right? Separate yourself as much as possible. And this, of course, in the Mennonite tradition is the traditional answer. Just get away. Right? Create your own little holy community. And hope that the evil stays out there, and we're gonna be clean in and of ourselves, right? But if we do that, well, first of all, it doesn't work, and second of all, it means that we miss the good parts of it. If we treat our culture as evil, then we miss the really great parts of the culture around it, the wonderful parts of our culture, right? This is a good place to live in a lot of ways. It also is a horrible place to live in other ways, right? But if we only look at the horrible part and we treat the whole thing as evil, we're going to miss the good stuff. And it also means that we're going to ignore all of those people, right? The teachers, the nurses, the doctors, and the students, and just the regular, ordinary folks who are working their butt off to make this place better. We wouldn't do that if we thought it was evil. It's just unclean. So what if our society, right? And this, I mean, I think most of you think that already. You made it, I'm just putting stuff into words that you already know, right? Think about this society as unclean rather than evil. And I think about this in the context of Labor Day. It's Labor Day, or at least tomorrow's Labor Day, close enough. And part of Labor Day is not in praise of labor, but in dignifying labor, in recognizing that labor is important and that labor deserves dignity and power. People who have jobs that require physical labor are not less than and should not therefore be paid, right? Rewarded less than people who work with their hands or their brains or whatever, or like with me with my mouth. Right? And this is something we need to do, right? Often, like we just have Labor Day once a year, right? But it's a sign, again, a symbol of something we just should be doing. And we had a brief time at the beginning of COVID where we started to talk about essential workers. And we patted the essential workers on the head. We didn't necessarily give them a raise and we didn't necessarily give them healthcare, but at least we patted them on the head. It's a start, right? And now some of them are getting raises because, their labor is actually needed and there aren't enough of them and it's complicated, right? Right? So let's ask questions. What would WVU look like if the maintenance staff was the best paid people? That'd be different, right? Because the professors, they got other awards, right? They got, PhDs, and they've got, all the perks that go along with being an educated person, and you get to stand in front of the, the classroom and all that power and that comes with that. And maybe you don't recognize, maybe you've never seen that, but trust me, it's there sort of, right? And the janitors, right? mean, when you go down the hallways of your school, right, it's useful to know the names of the profs you pass, right? To say hi, to know their names, say, hey, George, how's it going? And to make that sort of conversation. Not true of the maintenance staff. People walk by the janitors all the time, have no idea who they are. Right? The secretaries maybe, because the secretaries make the whole thing work. But let's face it, your trash piles up. You're gonna notice that too. Right? Nobody vacuums the floor. You're gonna notice that. It's gonna start to smell after a while. Right? Essential workers, all of us. What would the hospital look like if it had a flat pay scale? Everybody in the hospital makes the same amount of money. You get more money if you're there longer, but otherwise, right, it's a flat pay scale. And this is a dream, never gonna happen. But as a dream, it gives us a goal. Right? We work toward flattening the pay scale rather than working toward raising the pay even higher for the people at the top, and while not raising the pay for the people at the bottom. Right? What if we kept saying, let's just keep trying to make this smaller rather than let's just keep trying to make this bigger, which is where it's currently going. Dreams are important. Right? We need to have this dream of a better world, this dream of justice, love, and peace, and then plan and then act. But you're not going to plan or act until you have the dream. Also in this, we need to be ready to be challenged by others. Maybe our dream isn't big enough, or maybe it's just goofy. Maybe it's not going to work for very obvious reasons that someone else can point out to us. And that's also part of our story, right? Jesus and his band of merry men are wandering through Galilee, wandering all over, preaching and teaching and, telling people the word. And suddenly they get taught by a Syrophoenician woman. And Jesus listens. He pays attention. He goes, oh, maybe my gospel isn't big enough. Maybe my plans aren't actually as good as I thought they were. Maybe the kingdom of heaven is bigger than I claimed it to be. Thinking about labor also helps us to think about rest. Right? Keep in mind, Jesus is on vacation. Thinking about labor helps us think about a time when everybody will have enough. This woman says, I'll take leftovers. I want to still be fed. Right? And if everyone should have enough, that means that everybody deserves enough. And everybody deserves enough, again, reminds us of the table that we share. So for those of you who are on Zoom and are participating that way, hopefully you have some bread and some juice handy. And if not, well, there's always water and hopefully something in your cupboard. And if not, give me a call. We'll figure something out. I still have Rachel's bread from last time she gave out bread. Still some in my freezer. Does she have more? She has an obscenity of bread, right? Okay. And even the weirder thing is, those of you on Zoom, if you came to church right now, there's like a number of cases of mangoes sitting at the church. Like whoever would have thought we had cases of mangoes sitting at the church? What a strange world this is. Right, which, by the way, for those of you who know me, recognize this is a form of heaven for me, is cases of mangoes. But not they aren't Ghanaian mangoes, but they're probably okay. So anyway, right, communion, bread and wine. In Jesus' day, basic stuff.